Okay, so it is my pleasure to introduce you all to Ioanna. She came to the TCBES program, okay, with with an interest of really jumping in to the nearshore environment, but community people. She would really want to take that deep dive into understanding um, how these ecosystems support livelihoods and people, and especially women, and the idea of gendered roles for women. And we tried really hard to make that happen for her. It didn't actually, work out. There was some danger about going to a certain area of the world. And so anyway, it finally did work out for her to get that experience of working in that nearshore environment and for community, for her community. And I'm going to hand it off, and she will share this lovely journey that she had.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Lisa. Aloha mai kako and Melody. My name is Ioanna Gotschall, and I'm from the outer islands of Maraki and Mayan from the Republic of Kiribati. Today, I'll be talking about rebuilding resilient reefs on the front lines of climate change, specifically on the largest atoll in the world and the largest landmass in the Republic of Kiribati, Kiritimati Island. So, just to give y'all a brief overview of what we'll be talking about for the next half hour. First, we'll meet place, because I really can't introduce myself without introducing place. And we'll talk about why an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean matters as a global template for reef management in a changing climate. I sound a bit nervous. I am. Anyways, second, I'll take you on my journey of self-discovery and what brings me before you today. Third, we'll get to know the agencies and stakeholders involved in managing coral reefs on Kiritimati Island and Kiribati as a whole. Fourth, we will cover my collaborative journey with my mentor agency and the motivations driving my 3 project deliverables. Finally, this could pick up any more of my huffing and puffing. Finally, we'll talk about future hopes for the agency and what I hope to accomplish after graduation. For a brief overview of Kiribati, the Republic of Kiribati gained independence from British colonial rule on July 12, 1979. The island nation claims 32 atoll islands and a raised coral island of Bonnet. The total land area is 811 square kilometers, or for you Americans, 313 square miles, spread across about 3.5 million square kilometers, or 1.3 million square miles of ocean. So, for a little bit of context, that's over 99% of the country that is ocean. Ranking 186th in size, Kiribati has the 12th largest exclusive economic zone in the world, or EEZ. So it comes as no surprise then that Kiribati rely on marine life for food security, livelihoods, and cultural identity. So the 33 islands are divided into 3 island groups: the Gilbert group, the Phoenix group, and the Line group, way over here. Here is a schematic of where Kiribati is in the South Pacific region. So yeah, it is the majority of the population of Kiribati are in the Gilbert group over here. The first settlers of Kiribati came from Southeast Asia through Micronesia, some 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. But the region saw an influx of Samoan influence by the 14th century CE and adopted a gerontocratic system of governance, which is based on rule by elders. So, unlike the Gilbert group, the Line and Phoenix group has no prehistoric population, or at least not permanent population, and are government owned, kind of a residual of British colonial rule. Following European contact, Kiribati experienced a massive cultural shift, including a widespread adoption of Christianity and a lifestyle transition from a mostly subsistence-based economy and lifestyle to a cash economy. Today, Christianity is deeply ingrained into communities, and in Kiritimati, where all land is government-owned, churches have become leaders and meeting houses in their communities. So, as I mentioned before, the total population, I did not mention that. The total population of Kiribati, according to the 2020 census, is around 116,000 folks. So that's pretty tiny. Over half of these people, around 63,000 people, are located in the capital. Not just the capital, but a sliver of capital, Tarawa. They're all located on South Tarawa, which is about 15.76 square kilometers. South Tarawa attracts most of the outer island populations in the Gilbert group because it hosts the main urban center in Kiribati, including job opportunities and important educational opportunities like high schools and vocational training. So, the other growing urban center is on Kiritimati. To address overcrowding and literal inundation, the government of Kiribati is in the process of relocating South Tarawa populations to its largest landmass, Kiritimati. Kiritimati boasts about 70% of the total land area in Kiribati. That's 388 square kilometers, or 150 square miles. With a lagoon that's roughly the same size. The atoll is about 150 kilometers in diameter, while the lagoon shoreline extends for over 48 kilometers, or 30 miles. Most outer islands are majority subsistence-based, but even urban centers on Kiritimati, in particular, rely heavily on their marine and terrestrial environment for sustenance. So, due to its geographic isolation, there are frequent shipping shortages. Due to its geographic isolation, there are frequent shipping shortages coupled with its arid climate and frequent droughts. Food security is a huge concern for Kiritimati in particular. Just a little background history of Kiritimati. There is archaeological evidence of early Polynesian settlements between 1250 and 1450 BC. Then, following European contact and heavy quotations, discovery by Captain Cook in 1777 on Christmas Eve, the island remained relatively deserted until the 1920s, when Kiribati from the Gilbert Islands arrived to work on coconut plantations. This was because in 1916, Kiritimati became a colony of Britain alongside the Gilbert group. Some line islands were added later in 1919, with final ones added in 1972. Anyway, in 1950s, Kiritimati saw a new influx of inhabitants as a contingent workforce for British American nuclear testing. kind of arrived to the island. The effects of these nuclear tests are still felt today. Kiritimati is a part of the South Pacific Nuclear Free Zone because of this experience. So the area circled up there and down here are the human populations on Kiritimati Island. Now, the rest is bird sanctuary, actually, and balancing this tourism-heavy economy, the needs of its people, and a copra industry with conservation efforts and food security needs has been a challenge, to say the least. So what? No, why is this island in the middle of nowhere so important? Well, as mentioned earlier, TCBES is on the front lines of climate change and predicted to be among the first to succumb to sea level rise. So aside from literal inundation, saltwater intrusion of the freshwater lands poses a significant threat to human settlements, with people even on Kiritimati displaced due to declined potable water access. Now, rising sea surface temperatures, or SSTs, pose another significant threat, not only to human livelihoods, but marine life as well. The past decade shows very concerning ocean warming patterns, with El Nino Southern Oscillation, or ENSO events, sustaining sea surface temperatures well past coral bleaching thresholds. In 2015 through 2016, for example, record SSTs were recorded for over 10 consecutive months, and consequently resulted in decimation of coral species. We're talking 90 to 99% coral mortality. That's an extinction event. Corals are important because not only are they foundational for coral atolls, they also provide reef inhabitants with shelter, food, habitat, and also protect coastlines from erosion, wave action, and provide food, recreation, and economic opportunities for human populations. It was estimated that coral reef ecosystems provide over 2.5 billion in the Asian Pacific region per year of economic benefit. So, what was I? TCBES is being covered with over 99% of water, is ranked one of the highest per capita consumption rates of seafood in the world, and declining coral cover directly threatens food security, as well as cultural identity. Not only does declining coral cover mean less fish and marine life biodiversity, that means less resilient reefs. It also means that the resulting algal blooms could literally poison human populations with, for example, ciguatera poisoning, which is a huge issue not only in Kiritimati, but across the Pacific and across the world. Kiritimati and TCBES as a whole is severely data deficient, y'all. I mean, there is no internally generated data available on macroinvertebrate populations and coral. Most of the data comes from outside sources, outside institutions, coming to TCBES and collecting data, and then going back to their designated places and writing about it. Now, there is no actual data being produced on TCBES for its marine life. So this means that TCBES has no baseline data on any invertebrate species of interest, including keystone and economically valuable species. The lack of baseline data available is an urgent issue in light of the government's plans to relocate populations from South Tarawa. To ensure Kirismes can support Kiribati for future generations, data on marine life is critical to monitoring reef health and resilience. Kirismes offers a window into the effect of climate change on coral reef ecosystems. Importantly, it offers a window of opportunity into building coral reef community resilience and a template for doing such. So, how did I end up here? I moved to Kirismes over here with my family in 2010, but my conservation journey began about 5 years beforehand on the outer islands of Meraki, circled over here. So, Asian market demand for sea cucumbers introduced the sea cucumber, or bêche de mer, trade to Kiribati and the Pacific region. It was a huge sensation because it was like taking candy from a baby, and so much easier than the other income alternative of harvesting coconuts for the copper trade. Oh my goodness, I personally participated in the collapse of my local sea cucumber stocks and experienced the silt and algae covered aftermath of an overexploited keystone species. This tragic and devastating experience awakened a sense of wonder for the often overlooked members of reef systems, macroinvertebrates. I soon realized the passion for community-based management when I became involved in the agencies governing Kirismes land and marine resources. So, unlike islands in the Gilbert Group that are governed by elders and ancient traditions through island councils, Kirismes is, as I mentioned before, entirely government owned. So, this means that it has a very top-down structure of governing. It's very like, oh, we tell the people what to do. There's very, at least in my perspective, very few instances for a conversation between community and this management authority. So I saw an urgent need to address agency capacity and community involvement, as well as community compliance, through more community-based initiatives from the government agency. There are community-based fishery management, or CBFM, initiatives underway in Kiribati, but they're concentrated in the Gilbert Group, and I really hope to see something similar develop for Kirismes Island. Now, for the agency governing the coastal area on Kirismes, the Ministry of Fisheries and Ocean Resources is the umbrella organization, a ministry of the government of Kiribati, that's charged with achieving a sustainable and vibrant economy for Kiribati through the development of fisheries and marine resources, following the objectives of the current Kiribati Development Plan. And that depends on who's in charge at what point. Anyway, the Coastal Fisheries Division is one of 6 M4, or Ministry of Fisheries and Ocean Resources, one of 6 M4 divisions, and it's mandated with the sustainable management of coastal marine life within 3 nautical miles seaward. Now, CFD works closely with island councils which are based on elder governance, in the Gilbert Group to manage coastal marine life, as I mentioned, 3 nautical miles seaward. But in the Line and Phoenix Islands, where all land is government owned, CFD is the sole managing agency. Now, this can be a lot of work, especially for CFD staff of 10, who is charged with monitoring a shoreline that extends over 48 kilometers squared, plus a lagoon area, which is 300 plus square kilometers, and the pink and purple areas highlighted in the map. Here is a better view of that. So the fisheries closed areas are the pink highlighted, and the green highlighted areas are wildlife closed areas for bird sanctuaries. You'll also see red numbers over here, 1, 2, and 3. These are protected islets and exclusively bird sanctuaries. There is no humans are allowed here. And it's just an awesome sight to behold, you guys. Anyway, leading up to my experience with my mentor agency, we were in conversation for months beforehand. And collaboration between the principal fisheries officer, Max Peter, my mentor, shout out Max, highlighted a couple main concerns. First was that CFD lacked capacity to monitor research and also ensure compliance on any of the fishing regulations that we had, including closures, no take areas, etc. The second was there was no data being collected by CFD staff alone. So after expressing my passion for macroinvertebrates and an interest in monitoring and research, I was embedded into the monitoring, research, and statistical analysis team of 1. Shout out to Senior Fisheries Assistant Ariera Sinton for all her help and support throughout this process. She and I did everything together, and I cannot express enough my appreciation for this woman. So, what did I do? So the first month of my internship began in June 2024, and it coincided with the reopening of the sea cucumber fisheries and a rollout of the 2024 sea cucumber regulations. So the fisheries had been closed since 2012, following a collapse of this vulnerable macroinvertebrate species. So for the following month, Ariera and I and the CFD team translated the 2024 sea cucumber regulations and species information into TCBES. So Ariera and I presented this information. That's a video of us. Thank you, Tarapona, for recording. Anyway, we curated presentation slides that were entirely in TCBES and presented this information only once, sadly, but we had plans to present in every village on Kiritimati. There are 5 in total, including London or London, Poland, Tennessee, and Banana. Am I missing someone? Ah, yes, my home village of Tabakia. Anyway, we presented at a weekly or Monday weekly meetings for public employees at the Linux complex in Brunton Village. And sadly, budgeting constraints prevented us from spreading this information to other villages. But come the financing, we have the plan. So to address these budgeting challenges, CFD team and I brainstormed and executed cost-effective ways to disseminate this important information. So first, we composed letters detailing regulations, and then we delivered them to 10 churches around the island with an ask that church leaders read these letters to their congregations and inform them of the new regulations that had been rolled out that year. Second, sadly you cannot see the letter, but I hope you get to see the infographic. Oh, sad. I worked so hard on that. But anyway, I developed an infographic using the translated material that CFD team and I worked on. And this infographic was to be posted in public areas and storefronts for, convenient information dissemination. Convenient and hands-off information dissemination. Budgeting challenges, however, prevented the printing and posting of this infographic, but it is ready to be used whenever. So, what these regulations kind of really highlighted was the fact that there is no existing baseline data for sea cucumbers on Kiritimati. We did not know what was out there, or how much was out there, and where to find it. This lack of data would prevent any attempt at effective and sustainable management of this vulnerable fisheries. So in July, Hariara and I began composing a government proposal and protocols for invertebrate and benthic surveys that would be accessible to CFD staff. So this map relays the sites that we visited and want to visit. So the blue sites in the lagoon here and the green sites over there are all sites that we visited. This red star here is actually the coral farm nursery, which I will get to in just a sec. But these green guys over here, these points, were bunk, basically. We found no macroinvertebrates or any coral. But the blue ones over here were very promising, with at least one sea cucumber sighting, which is amazing, and giant clam presence. Like, giant clams were everywhere, especially in the lagoon. The rest of the points are actually based on the coral farm nursery or previous coral farm nursery monitoring sites. So we were like, where do we begin? Thankfully, there has been a strong Pacific Community Presence, or SBC, in Kiribati, and I thought, you know what, we should probably, base our survey protocols off of what they recommend. So we based our invertebrate survey protocols on a SPC marine invertebrate monitoring guidebook, which is linked in that SPC word. Anyway, it is linked to that phrase. So if you want access to this, just let me know and I'll shoot you what I got. Anyway, these qualitative surveys were performed in 9 out of 20 potential sites. As I said before, the blue areas over here, 7 were promising and 2 were not. But these surveys involved just noting presence or absence. So CFD team and I, it's always Ariera, shout out to Hindi, and our boat drivers, Dob and Tarahona, for bringing us to these sites, were performed at like 30 to 1 hour intervals, just looking and noting presence or absence data. Of course, I really want to check out the rest of the sites and see whether or not we can find sea cucumbers or giant clams there. These sites, as I mentioned before, are based on previous coral monitoring excursions, but they're also informed by community members, at least in conversations with community members on where they've seen sea cucumbers specifically. They're very hard critters to find. They may be slow moving, but they hide very well. So why these species of interest? Well, these 7 sea cucumber species were specifically mentioned in the sea cucumber regulations, and we found it pertinent to understand population dynamics, especially as a baseline for our monitoring research and kind of measuring whether or not we were effectively managing this fisheries to begin with. The first one is black teat fish, white teat fish, green, excuse me. So, my goodness. Let me collect myself. So why these species of interest, right? Well, not only are these species keystone species to coral reef ecosystems, all of them are associated with coral reefs. Sea cucumbers in particular cycle up to 90% of benthic biomass in the ocean and are valuable bridges between benthic communities and pelagic, or the open water column. Anyway, these species, giant clams and sea cucumbers, as well as coral, are broadcast spawners, meaning they release eggs and sperm into the water column. They fertilize outside of adult individuals, and these fertilized larvae have to find their way back to suitable habitat, basically, following varying environmental cues, including chemosensory cues, sound, and even sight. So, the importance of giant clams, on the other hand, Tridacna species, is that they act as kind of large-scale biofilters. They are associated with decreasing eutrophication by filtering out plankton for clear waters where corals can thrive in, and they also act as zooxanthellae reservoirs, or the same photosynthetic symbionts that are present in coral. So, giant clams literally excrete these zooxanthellae guys and offer reservoirs for these symbionts to find shelter in when corals cannot support them, meaning when corals are bleaching, they can basically not die because a bleached coral is not a dead coral yet. They can offer these photosynthetic symbionts to these bleached coral via their poop, and help a coral reef bounce back in no time. So these guys also use chemosensory cues to aid settlements in preferred habitats. So the next deliverable for my internship was kind of curated in August. Ioanna and I were tasked with creating a coral farm update report for the ministry. And so this coral farm was created in 2016 following the devastating bleaching event that I had mentioned earlier. And it was founded in collaboration between CFD and the coral founder, and the founder of Corals for Conservation, this smiley guy over here, Dr. Austin Bowden Kirby, bless his soul. So the mission of C4C, or Corals for Conservation, was basically to farm and transplant heat resilient supercoral and kind of rebuild heat resilient reef communities. So the idea revolves around identifying surviving reef building coral, think acropora species like staghorn coral, from hotspots, and relocating these individuals to cooler waters. In this case, the coral reef, or the coral farm nursery. So nursery locations are open water systems that utilize existing marine life, like herbivores, to clean and maintain coral propagations. Methods, pictured in the lower section here, utilize fingerlings suspended on ropes attached to a metal frame, or they attached fingerlings on cookies or old coral slabs or cement slabs. The other methodology used in this coral farm was an A-frame metal structure, or like a 3D design type thing. But following COVID-19 and limited CFD capacity, the farm had fallen into disrepair. And as you can see in the bottom three images, it's kind of sad. The strung out coral on ropes had fallen to the ground and died. But the ones on the table on cookies seem to have survived. But what really stands out in this corner right here is that A-frame design. Now, the lack of maintenance over the 2 years, interestingly, answered a really important question. What method of propagation could survive a natural system with very little human intervention? The lower left corner, as I had highlighted earlier, is a thicket of staghorn coral growing on that experimental A-frame design. So moving forward, these A-frame designs can be transplanted in areas where they can naturally seed neighboring reefs. Now, the focus on acropora species was because they exhibit among the fastest growth rates. Staghorn coral in particular can attain growth rates of about 4 to 8 inches a year. Not only that, but they also provide the most habitat for reef fish and invertebrates. So they are ideal candidates for coral farms. Anyway, to sum up my internship journey, in June, we focused on sea cucumbers and regulations, curating material to basically for public outreach. July was focused on curating this invertebrate survey protocol that was accessible to CFD staff, meaning we didn't need a fancy scuba license. We just needed a snorkel and a pair of fins, and some waterproof paper, which is really hard to attain, guys. In August, we focused on the coral farm update, and that's kind of where we worked in our benthic protocol into the invertebrate survey protocol as well, because we wanted to see whether or not these species were supporting each other or not. So, as I touched on previously, there is very little locally generated coral and invertebrate data and capacity to monitor reefs in Kiritimati and the TCBES region. Now, agency plans include conducting these proposed invertebrate surveys, as well as building capacity among CFD staff. Now, recent workshops on drone technology has really kind of inspired a lot of hope as far as building capacity goes. And I really hope that we learn more on how to utilize this technology to monitor coral reefs and coral reef growth. Now, of course, the next plan is also rebuilding and reactivating that coral nursery I was talking about. Now, for my plans, I really hope to address this data gap by becoming one of the few TCBES to be scientifically or scientific diver certified, as well as expand my coral monitoring skills so that I can give back to my own community. I really hope to potentially bridge Kiritimati and TCBES coral conservation work with the great work that's being done in Hawaiʻi. And I really hope to embody that connection. I also hope to really just expand my coral conservation efforts by researching the connection between macroinvertebrates and coral. For example, the role of giant clams as reservoirs for symbionts, and really look into the nutrient cycling roles of sea cucumbers more, just to name a few topics of interest to me. Now, a really huge mahalo to all of you that have supported me thus far. Shout out to the M4 and CFD team. Without you, I would be nothing. Thank you, Max, Peter, Harihara Sinton, Tarakona, Tebukata, Tabukare, Tirabinis, Tatawa Alefayo, Tokanimen, Urawa, Kimere, Erika, Hindi Gimson, for all of your help. The Corals for Conservation founder, Dr. Bowden Kirby, and my academic advisor, Lisa Cannelli, I don't know where I would be right now, if not for your supportive role throughout this entire process, as well as supportive UH faculty. And last but not least, my TCBES cohort, y'all, these connections, these are for life. And I could not be more appreciative of the people I've ended up with. Mahalo and kampesinda. Oh, yes.
I just had a little one because you were talking about like the radioactive testing and stuff, like Project Trinity, things that happened near Christmas Island. Do you think there's any way that the sea cucumbers or anything, any natural species could help clean up that? Because you were talking about there were two types of poisons there. And I don't know about a lot of radiation of like the radioactive poisoning there or how it still stands now, because I've heard it's gonna be there for thousands of years. But are there any natural species that could help clean that area up?
Oh my God, great question. There are no studies done on the effects of nuclear testing on Grismes today. As far as the bioremediation potential for sea cucumbers and giant clams in this respect, I have no idea. That's a great question to research further, I think, and it would be great to know. Oh, as far as ciguatera poisoning goes, that is directly correlated with coral cover. So declining coral cover means increasing algae cover, and it's the algae that produce the ciguatoxin. So yes, even stony coral is good coral, and the smooth type, you know.
Would the radiation contribute to the growth?
I have no idea.
Because radiation makes a lot of, like humans.
That's a great question to investigate further. But nuclear, the nuclear aspect didn't really pop into my mind until recently. I won't lie, which, it's kind of funny how very little information is available, especially in Kiribati, and very few conversations on the nuclear past. So yeah, it was not at the forefront of my mind, but now it is. Yes, right.
With the coral nursery, you have to forgive me about this answer, but with the string that fell onto the ground and eventually did not make it, is there algae? Like, is it contact with the surface that allows algae to get on the coral and kill it? That's why the pyramid grows better, or predators that can get to it when it fell?
It's basically lack of water flow.
Oh,
Those 3D structures enabled corals, to get that nutrient input. And also, here, I can go back to that picture, but just all the sediment that's at the bottom there is really not good for, it'll cover the coral and inhibit photosynthetic ability. But yeah, water flow is important. Yes, Ariel.
Your talk was amazing, and the heat resilient corals are super interesting. Is that like something that only certain kinds of coral can be can only certain kinds of coral be propagated to be heat resilient, or is that like all coral?
I think it's really all coral. We chose really any surviving coral, especially with recent heat waves. I think the most recent bleaching event was last year. So really, you go into hot pockets and look at surviving coral. That's a heat resilient coral right there. And the plan is to just relocate it to cooler waters, and hopefully, it'll be able to recolonize, even those hot spots. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
This is kind of like a super cool presentation, by the way. Love it. It's kind of a bigger picture question, and honestly, I don't know if there's an answer, which is why I'm asking it. But I know you touched upon this, how there's really just a lack of resources, a lack of internal data, all of these really, extractive scientific things kind of going on. How can we in Hawaii, who have access to these institutions and agencies and really just have the resources that are lacking, how can we support you or support this work? I think not just here, but across Oceania. Is there a way that we can do that?
Yes. 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 The number one way that I can think of is workshops, and really teach a fisherman how to fish type thing, by empowering local communities, they can collect their own data and monitor their own reefs. And I think Hawaii is an amazing example of that community-based movement. And there's really just a lot. I was really inspired by the community-based movement on Hawaii. And that's kind of really what drove my application to this program to begin with. But yes, training, oh my God. Because the people there, they want to learn, you really can't overstate how much love one has for home, and if the information is there and it is readily accessible, then it will be used and used for good. Yes, I hope that answers something. Yes.
Thank you again so much for your talk. I really learned a lot here too. So you mentioned how there's very few sea cucumbers at the spots that you looked at, but yet they're reinstating the rules that will allow them to harvest more sea cucumbers. Did they reinstate the rules because they saw a greater influx of sea cucumbers in other islands? Or did they just kind of say, okay, it's been long enough? Here we go.
You know what? That's a great question, and a little unrelated, but in December, they had to reclose the fishery because of that lack of data available, and also just compliance was really difficult to manage. In conversation with community members on TCBES, I was like, what was the sea cucumber population like? What could you find? And they were like, oh, it was everywhere, like literally just pick it off the ground. But now, like the areas that they pointed at, you could find nothing. So that, and I'm talking to like 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds. So that's in my lifetime. They remembered 10 years ago, a very populous sea cucumber population. And now there's just barely any. It could be that our timing was kind of off, like it was recommended further down our surveying efforts that we go at dusk or dawn to kind of catch the nocturnal species coming out. It could have been timing, but I think the ministry realized that the stock populations had not recovered and more time is needed for that recovery process to happen. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Any more questions? Yes.
On your site map, I was just wondering why, to the right of the Bay of Grants, there was just a random Like, is that just that area picked from local knowledge, or are they randomized?
That was actually based on the coral surveys that were done in previous years, back in 2018 and 2017. That that area right there is actually known for like a really vibrant coral community. I've never dove over there myself, but from hearing accounts of those who have, the population is thriving. And it's one of the few places on the island that has this vibrant community left. It was also chosen because that entire area is not populated. And these sample sites kind of give you an idea of population gradient. With the majority of fishing happening here, Rondon and the Bagya and Banana are kind of the heavily populated centers. And Poland down here is not very populated at all. So yeah, they were kind of chosen on that fishing pressure schematic. But oh my God, if I could survey the entire island, I would. Any more questions?
All right. Well, thank you very much for your talk.